You're listening to All About Girls of Color podcast, a space dedicated to creating environments that allow girls to thrive. We explore issues and solutions that focus on removing obstacles so the natural joy and genius of girls can bloom. Join us as we dive into conversations all about girls of color and the women they become.
I'm Tanisa Kunright, the founder and executive director of Detour Empowers and the Fancy Teen Girls Leadership Academy.
I'm Gabriela Delgado, an educator and principal consultant for Saving Our Starfish.
And I'm Janedra Sykes, an equity, diversity, and inclusion certified organizational development coach and consultant and a partner in Arboreta Group.
Disclaimer. Our intention is to bring our whole selves to the conversations by bringing our professional and personal selves to each episode. Any views or opinions on the podcast are personal and belong solely to the creators and do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations that the creators may or may not have been associated with in a professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated.
All right, welcome back to another episode of All About Girls of Color. We have Ady Huertas with us today. I have the pleasure of introducing her, so I'm going to read a little bit about her bio because I thought she had such great things. I want to make sure I highlight some of these. So we'll get into a great, enriching conversation with you, Ady, but just so the audience knows a little bit about you. So Ady's worked for the San Diego Public Library for 25 years. And I know when people think sometimes librarians, they might not think of like a cool, badass person like you. So that's why we're so excited to have you. But 25 years with the San Diego Public Library, you serve as the Youth, Family, and Equity Services Program Manager, where you execute large-scale public programs and crafts and contributes to library initiatives and policies with a special focus on equity and the impact to youth and families. Ady's also served as the chair of the Seguimos Creando Enlaces Committee, which for over a decade has been hosting binational library conferences, bringing together library staff from the U.S. and Mexico to collaborate and share best practices. In 2013, Ady helped establish the LGBTQIA Library Services Committee at the San Diego Public Library, collaborating with library staff to provide programming, services, and resources year-round to support and celebrate our LGBTQ+ community. She also serves as the co-lead of the San Diego County LGBTQ+ Latin Coalition, providing a welcoming space for local queer Latin community to connect, as well as supporting our LGBTQ+ migrant community through fundraising efforts. Most recently, she's been recognized nationwide as one of Library Journal's 2022 Movers and Shakers for work as a community builder. Ooh. So Ady Huertas is with us. Again, super excited to have you, Ady. So we just want to thank you for joining us. We just really want to learn from you. There's so much that you do, but I had said this earlier. Sometimes we don't maybe default to thinking as the library as a place where advocacy can really happen. And so we'd love to just hear from you, kind of what does that look like for you? What drives that passion for you? So feel free to share and we'll just take it from there.
Yeah, I think a lot of my passion comes from my lived experience and my connections in community and my observations and interaction. I'm a public servant at heart. This is the reason why I think public libraries made such good sense for this to become a career. But really, it's about providing core services to communities, right? And I think libraries are a beautiful place where you can come and connect and find anything that can help, from education to like basic needs to obviously literacy and literature. But I think it's a lot more than that, right? It's connecting with community, is knowing where to find the things that you need. It's a cultural hub where folks can come together. And it's really one of the, I think we are, and I love this about libraries, that we are still a trusted space in communities. So it's a place where folks feel comfortable kind of sharing what some of those needs might be. And it's lifelong learning, right? It's a place where folks can find things at various stages in their lives, whether they're starting a career, starting a business, whether they're a student and need homework assistance, families that are new to the United States, immigrant communities coming into the United States. That's like the place to go where you can get free services. And that's the other beauty of things is from libraries is that we, I get paid to connect folks to free things. Everything is free at the library, right? So information is free, but resources are free, programming. And so to me, that's really important. I would be a terrible business person because I like to like give everything away for free. But I love that for me, the library was that space when I was a youth that I went to. Well, one of the first spaces that I went to when I was struggling with language, but my mom and my family did a good job of like always kind of going to the library. And that's where I discovered myself. That's where I saw myself and people like me, and where I learned to, speak English and like really connect to materials and things that like spoke to me. But it wasn't just the items that were at the library. It was the folks that worked at libraries that connected me, and that kind of made that connection with me to like know, what it was that I needed in terms of support, during that time when everything was so new and daunting and crazy in this, in this country. And I will say, I was born here in the United States, but I left very young, and then I didn't come back until I was an older youth, almost a teen. So learning English was a struggle for me, but it also, I think my lived experience, as I mentioned, has helped me understand some of the challenges and some of the resources and how we can support folks when, whether they're new to this country or whether they are a family that has a youth that's struggling with reading, or whether you need basic resources, or whether you're from a community that has been marginalized, and that experience, that kind of, we carry a lot. I live at my intersections, and my lived experiences is not just, language and my ethnic background, but I'm also a queer woman of color, and there's a lot there in terms of my personal lived experiences that I kind of see where communities could also get support. So I don't know if I kind of answered your question in terms of where my passion comes from, and that when you referencing back to advocacy, I think that we can all be advocates in our spaces, and we have a responsibility to do that, right? What a better place where it's a community hub where we can advocate for all of our communities and for the needs of our communities, and where we can provide those core resources to help our communities thrive. And I think that's what libraries do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so true. I'm really struck by your comment about everyone could be an advocate, and I think back on my experience at libraries, and I just got to say, librarians have the best people skills. You know what I mean? Like, whenever I go, I like to hang out in front of the reference desk for a while and just watch, these librarians field these questions from every kind of person, and it's like nothing rattles them, and be like, I be out of here.
Special training.
That is the beauty of working in public service. It's never a dull moment. It's very exciting, and you are prepared to kind of, you could hear anything from where can I find this book to, I am, getting evicted today and I really need to figure this out for myself, to, I'm looking for this most rare book because we're producing a movie. I mean, it really, the range is all there. But I think that is part of being a public servant, is understanding that, folks come in, we're all human, and folks come in with whatever, you're coming in with, but for us to be able to kind of be that resource and maintain that calm, and also answer, connect folks. We are those community connectors, right? So we might not be the experts, but we are the experts in connecting you to the resources that you need.
Yeah. I think for me, the library it levels the playing field.
Absolutely.
It just makes you feel like you're just a person, just like everybody else is a person. And we're all just kind of equal, and we're all in this happy place. Because for me, the library has always been a happy place. And I know especially with the girls that we work with, a lot of them go to the library after school because, like you said, it is a safe place. And I know specifically the Malcolm X Library over in southeastern San Diego, they have the Teen Center. So the fact that you guys provide programming and are always looking to innovate and support the kids that go there for that aftercare support because their families may not be able to afford a program for them. I think that's dynamic. And then also supporting nonprofits, because we've run programming out of the libraries before as well. So the real estate of it all is also something that definitely helps within the community, giving us that space.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, access is key to the services that we provide, right? And that's access to programming, to innovative programming, innovative new technology, right?
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that, you know, libraries are keeping up with the latest and greatest, and we want to make that available to our communities, like I said, at no cost and accessible, not just access to that technology, but how to use that technology, how to engage that technology, how to, connect to programming that's relevant to community needs, to student needs. And then one of the very few spaces, as you mentioned, and we were, chatting earlier about free space, and it's hard to kind of find that space that provides access to free space. All of our community rooms are free to folks that need to use them for whatever the need is, right? So, and it's wonderful to connect with local nonprofits, and the way that we run our programs and the way that we offer our programs, a big part of that has to do with the nonprofits and the community organizations that we connect with that can bring in those services and use the space. So it's a win-win for the library, because we can offer these in our spaces, but then have a range of programming that meets that community need.
Yeah, I remember I was getting ready and I was excited because, we like coming here and chatting with guests. But I was feeling a bit nostalgic because when my dad passed, the one item I wanted that was his was in his wallet, and it was his library card. And so it's
so sweet.
Oh, I don't want to get choked up telling the story, but my sisters probably would not understand why I wanted that one item. And it was like a weathered library card, like the corners, been cracked. And it has all the different barcodes, right? Because you could go to the different branches and scan. But that was the one thing that we would do together because it was free. And we would go to where they had all the VHS videos back. I'm dating myself a lot, but it was eventually, we would get
We'll put that in the show notes, what a VHS is. All
Google
right.
an image of that. But we would go to the libraries because you were able to check out 4 VHS videos and 1 documentary. So my dad and I would just go, and he'd say, "Okay, well, I'll pick my movies, you pick your movies. We come back here, we meet, and then we decide which ones we're taking, so we're within the limit." He usually would get the documentary so that I could pick up another one for myself. But that was one thing that we did. He was a traditional Mexican man that didn't talk a lot, wasn't very expressive, but that was the one thing he and I did. My other sisters, for whatever reason, were never into that, but eventually we would go check out DVDs and then CDs. So we weren't buying things. It was that we could go rent them for, about a week's time or whatnot. And that was just kind of our thing that we did. And so when I thought this morning of getting ready, I meant to bring the library card because I keep it right next to his picture from his memorial. But that to me was just like a cool thing that we got to do. And it was because the library, like you were saying, felt safe and comfortable. And the fact that it was accessible to my parents who didn't speak English, they knew enough to know that offers free services. And we didn't keep a lot of books in the home for that reason because we couldn't afford a Barnes & Noble or a Borders, from back in the day. I think we had a couple sets of those Britannica encyclopedias. I think they're probably in everyone's home. But we would go check out books because my parents knew, well, that's how we can give them access, but because we couldn't purchase. So it just brought back a happy feeling for me, and I wanted you to know that I connect you to that type of emotion because I feel like you create that space for families maybe without even knowing, because I don't know if they come back and share the importance of it. But
I think that's what's lovely about working in public service is that sometimes when we're working with youth or families or adults, we can kind of immediately kind of see that change or that thing that happens, but a lot of times we don't see it and we don't even realize it. We don't even, when we're talking about our collections and the way that we curate our collections and offering, and thank you for sharing that beautiful story. It just gave me like goosies, but that's beautiful. And it's wonderful to hear because it's true. Sometimes we don't even realize what that impact is, right? But I was going back to the collections. It's like we always are, we're making sure that we have multiple languages, that we have collections that are relevant to each community interest and need. And sometimes we hear back like years later, because you had these books that I could not find anywhere else and I could get for free, or I saw them displayed, or I could see myself reflected, or I could connect to it. that made a difference in my life. Or you had these really expensive like test books or engineering books or math books or medical books that as a student I couldn't like purchase, right? So, but I think that it's wonderful to hear it, but I think also we realize that when we're making those decisions, that this could have an impact that we might not even be, we might never hear about, but we understand what that impact is and what that, how that can make a difference for an individual.
Yeah. I just think about, my safe librarian story. I never forget it, is that Compton City Library, I was going to do a report on slavery, right, for class. And my mother dropped me off, to do some errands. And I go to the reference librarian and I said, I'm doing a report on slavery and I want books with pictures. I want to be able to. And so she got the books for me and she put them, I must have been 12 years old at the time. Is that like 6th grade? Anyway.
Around, yeah.
So she's, I remember her like putting the books on the table and saying, I want you to sit right here, right? And if you need anything, I'll be right over there. And I remember opening these books where it showed like the implements of slavery, like the collars and the hot boxes, and it wasn't the roots version kind of hot and sweaty in the fields, but it just showed the violence of it. And I remember it just kind of overwhelmed my 12-year-old mind, and I started crying at this table. And that librarian came and sat next to me, right? And kind of walked me through those pictures, right? And she sat next to me, and then when my mother came to pick me up, she called her over and said, and I could overhear them, I always eavesdrop on adult conversations, and she told my mother she wasn't ready for this. She's going to need some help to process that. And I see that woman's face all the time, and she just did like a trauma intervention, right, in the public library. Because, she kind of looked at me like, you sure you want to? Yeah, I want to see, And, that's where you got the real history, the unfeathered history, not the textbook, watered down. If you're interested, you could go to the public library and get the truth if you're looking for it.
Janedra, you're looking at my face, and I know you're already seeing the tears.
I remember that woman like it was yesterday. She just sat next to me because I was just stunned.
Shout out to that.
Yeah, by the violence of that truth,
Yeah, I'm so emotional. I don't know if this happens often with you, the three of you. But.
And it kind of rolls up on the people skills that librarians have, because you didn't roll up on my mother giving unsolicited advice, right? She had to navigate that family thing. And not come across as, why'd you let her, leave her looking at that stuff by herself? But she had to kind of assess our family dynamics and give that information to my mother in a way that didn't shame her.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Right? And then gave support to me. Right? I mean, it was pivotal.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And I know it's not the only... I know that happens often. And I don't think folks that work in the field realize, the skill sets that they have, right? But, that is very impactful. And it really got me in my feels. And I am so happy to hear that you had somebody there in that moment to help. Yeah.
But then I got another story of a librarian in Columbus, Mississippi.
I think this might be where I leave the room.
Yeah, which is real different. But anyway, she was, because, I was visiting my grandparents. I'm going to the library. And she, I went to take these books. And she was like, you sure you could read that? And it was like John Steinbeck. I don't know why I pulled it from the... Wow. And I'm like, yes, I can. right? And so I just remember going to my grandmother's house and having a dictionary under the bed, reading John Steinbeck like in 5th grade, and I'm going to get through this book. And the words I don't understand, I'm going to look them up. So, in a negative way, she was pivotal too, So I spent a summer reading all of John Steinbeck's book and Ernest Hemingway's book because she thought I couldn't do it. Right? And I did also have some Harlequin romances in there too.
Oh, good for you. I'm sorry that was a motivator, but good for you. That's great. And that's the one thing we talk about too, about our responsibilities as library workers, about not about letting folks having that diversity of thought and letting folks discover and that responsibility of like keeping like whatever our personal beliefs are to ourselves, understanding that there is a diversity of thought and it's our responsibility to have those resources and understand where folks might be and not like censoring our programs or, in the case of like making assumptions of what folks want to read. And it might be taking us into like the banned book conversation.
Yes, we were hoping we would go there.
But I think, we as library workers have a personal responsibility to, defend intellectual freedom and the freedom to read. And that's part of our First Amendment rights. And when we censor folks and when we censor books, we are really damaging our communities. We truly, really are. And I think that library workers understand that is our charge. And it's really unfortunate that in the last 20 years that the American Library Association has been documenting book bans, that we have had this like unprecedented amount of book challenges. Yet we have, and maybe I'll go into some statistics here. So I'll read this. So in 2022, so far in the first 10 months, we have had 781 book challenges, which exceeds 2021, which 2021 was already a record. And on top of that, we've had 1,835 unique titles targeted for those first 10 months. However, if we're looking at the public vote in terms of opposing these efforts of censorship, right? 71% of voters opposed the efforts to remove books from public libraries, and 67% of voters oppose efforts to remove books from school libraries. So the general public is in agreement, and for the most part, to understanding what censorship does to our communities. Yet we are seeing the most amount of books challenged since the history of the American Library Association recording the number of book challenges this year than ever before. And they've been documenting this for about over 20 years. But that is a big concern and problematic. And it's kind of, in a way, I was thinking back to Janedra and was like, are you sure you can read that? This challenge has reinvigorated us, unfortunately, that it's coming from like, this negative kind of a way to really understand and what our charges and what our obligation is as, library workers, and to really stand for democracy and to do all of the efforts that we can to provide this access that is vital in our community for youth to be able to see themselves and to discover their identities, and for folks to like understand other perspectives and other people, for families to have that opportunity when they're looking at a book, to have that opportunity to discuss some of these topics that come up and through literature and have that learning moment. And if we censor books, the folks that are the most impacted by this are our marginalized communities. Are those folks, those voices that folks are trying really hard to silence and drown, and that is very problematic.
I mean, when I've come across a list of the banned books, I mean, Toni Morrison, really? I mean, it's just the titles are just like.
I've been purchasing them. Like that's my reading list. I go on there.
Yeah.
Oh, you banned that one? Let me buy it.
Yeah.
I read The Hate You Give because it was. I mean, I wanted to read that on there, but I thought, because you put it on
I
that
love
list.
that book.
Yeah.
And I just thought but to your point about it's a strategic maneuver to silence and continue to almost completely ignore the fact that people have these real experiences, and because books bring them to life and it gives it its truth, then people want to almost create mechanisms where you control what people have access to and do not, and it's shameful, really. So that was my little way of trying to do what I can in my corner of the world. If I don't go out and strategically purchase these books to continue to support support. But I'm curious, Ady, what have you seen across libraries? What are people doing to try to create awareness or to advocate?
So for years, we have had our annual banned book celebration, which is basically our celebration to celebrate the freedom to read every year. And so we will have, that usually takes place at the kind of mid-December, towards the end of December, and we will have all of our libraries activated promoting banned books, promoting awareness of censorship and reading banned books, making banned books accessible. But I think that's one kind of big organized effort that's been ongoing, but we are consistently making sure that those books that are the hardest to find and the ones that are trying to be silenced, that those are prominent for our communities to find them, to have access to them. We create displays on every cultural celebration. We have LGBTQ displays year round. All of these things, and they're not just displays, but they are also come with programming, right? We are reading these books. We are making them available to community. We are doing, we have a summer reading program and a winter reading challenge. And the books that the books, and really truly the books that our communities are asking us for a lot of them tend to be banned books, those books that we recommend, during, these reading programs. And my goal is to have a banned book summer reading program where it's all banned books. So kind of like you said, you're picking up the banned books.
Yeah.
And then last year we were able to receive a grant where I was able to have a new program at the library called Books for Good Trouble. And it was social justice dialogues through books. So being inspired to have social justice conversations about various topics related to social justice, inspired by books. And the criteria, my personal criteria when we wrote this grant was the books had to be written by BIPOC authors or authors that were subject matter experts, mainly for marginalized communities, and maybe even authors that weren't necessarily well known, right? Authors that we need to elevate and let self-published authors and local authors that we need to elevate and give a platform to, so that other folks can discover them, connect, and kind of see their own personal stories and their own narratives reflected by folks that are from community. So what Books for Good Trouble offered was year-long programming highlighting different authors, but also having those important conversations about social justice issues that are impacting our local communities, and bringing folks of different thoughts, coming together to kind of hear from the subject matter experts, from the authors and subject matter experts, but also to have that community dialogue for some of those conversations that are sometimes hard, but to kind of build a better understanding and awareness, and also to have for youth especially, and for all, really all of all ages, but for youth to connect and see themselves, to in these stories, and to those folks that are writing these stories and that are promoting these stories, because those are all our stories, and that is key. And so that has continued. So I'm proud to say we kind of went through the grant cycle, but we built it now into our budget to continue that Books for Good Trouble effort and continue that programming, year round.
Yeah.
You know what? Yeah. And that is so needed in San Diego County, because this county's kind of weird. You know what I mean? We produce programs like that. And then Tucker Carlson went to La Jolla Country Day. It's just extreme.
And I was going to ask about engaging the youth. because technology is, so prevalent nowadays. So what are ways that you all use to engage the youth on the level of getting together around a book, reading, talking about it, and really being able to grow through that experience?
Yeah, I mean, there's various ways that we do that. We have each of our libraries are responsive to their community needs, right? And kind of like the demographics and how they're, the folks that are coming to libraries and folks that they know are in community. So we have various book clubs. I know I mentioned these, the summer reading programs and the winter reading challenge, but we have programming like cultural story times. We have book clubs that happen with youth at different ages for different grade levels. And we have those conversations, like I mentioned, the Books for Good Trouble, where we also realize that access is necessary. So if the youth needs to keep that book, we make sure that those books are given to the youth and that they can go home with it as well.
Oh, nice.
So it's not just coming to the program, but here's like the book so you can have it, and we can have these conversations and come back. We're going into schools where we brought like the Books for Good Trouble program to various schools, and we have a whole kind of lesson. We'll have like a day, sometimes a 2-day kind of lesson, having these conversations, and then youth start writing their own stories and start telling their own stories. And in terms of, but I really appreciate that you mentioned technology and social media. So we do have book clubs that happen online as well. We have engagement through our SDPL Teens Instagram account, where we have like writing contests and other things like that can happen remotely also, but can also we're reaching youth where they're at, right? So. And now we're working with, so the city has a new program called Employ and Empower, where we're offering paid internship and mentorship opportunities to come into not just the library as a city department to work there, but also at various city departments. So what we have is these media arts interns, and most of them are teens that can come in, can get paid, and can help us. Like, for example, if we wanted to do a banned books campaign or an anti-censorship campaign, those are the youth that are helping us have like these the social media presence that we need to have that will hit folks the right way. Cool. And they're working with like our library marketing team, our programming team, our and our staff at various libraries, because they're placed in various libraries to support with some of those skill sets that they have, and then to kind of connect those to the programming that we're doing and helping us kind of better promote and market or help us broadcast some of these programs so that we can have a wider reach. So they're getting like the skill sets, and they're getting paid like in terms of like the working skill sets, but they're also honing in on their own talents and bringing that in to work with library staff. And we are so grateful for that, because it's kind of helping us better connect with other youth in a way that resonates with youth, right?
And for them to, I would think, also see that that's a profession that maybe they hadn't explored, to say, I never would have thought of, of like, what? Like, I'm sure you would get that. Like, what do you have, what training, what degree? Like, maybe that's not a common career choice that we are presenting at the school level to students, to say that is actually a really neat career. So is that something that you've seen in your...
Oh, we get that all the time. Like, libraries are so fun, and you all do some crazy stuff. And, like, this is wonderful, because that's the beauty of public libraries, right? You can bring in your own interests and your own skill set, and you can find a way to turn that into a program that's going to be impactful for community, or into a resource that's going to be really valuable for community. And that's the thing. It's like I said, we are subject matter experts in connecting folks to like different things. But really, we welcome that diversity of thought and skill sets, because that's our communities. We serve everybody, right? We're welcoming space for everybody. And I am so proud to say that I have been fortunate to have, at this point, my count is 13 youth that I work with become part of the library workforce. Nice. So we're building that. And I'm working on another one. Actually, I have a call with him today. He was my more recent mentee last year. He started a program where he was only going to be around for 3 months, and he stayed for a whole year. And we found a way to continue to pay his mentorship program. And he has his interview on Friday. So we're talking tonight about preparing for the interview on Friday. But that pipeline to the workforce, and to me, working with youth and having them discover like even a career. Like I'm like, I don't care what you do. I fully support anything that you do. But if you want to become a librarian or a library worker and start here, I would love to have you here. And I've been very fortunate to see them come into the workforce and to see them grow and become librarians, you know. And to me, it's like, yay, I have that like proud like library mom moment, right?
I love that.
And that's my mission. And the thing is that, you know, our profession is still working on becoming more diverse and more reflective of our communities, right? And the only way that we're going to do that is to, you know, work with, you know, from the beginning to empower youth to discover like what we do, if this is a career path that they would like, but to bring in folks that reflect our communities, right? And I mean, to me, that was really important. When I became a librarian, I wasn't sure if that was the space for me because I didn't see a lot of librarians of color, you know, but I was like, well, then we need to have more. So I'm going to be here. I'm going to go through this. I'm going to find my tribe and I'm going to help create that diversity within that workforce. To me, that's key.
Yeah. It just kind of reminds me of the Library of Congress with Lizzo playing the flute in there, you know, and that was like huge on social media, you know, and it just... you could really tell it resonated with a lot of folks. I mean, a lot of folks didn't know she was classically trained, right? Yeah. You know,
I love that. Yeah, such
that
like a
cool.
geek moment.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah, it really was.
What was it that prompted you actually to go? I'm just curious, what led you to that? Did you have a mentor or what?
I did. Yeah. You know, I had a couple of mentors. I had a great library manager at the time that saw something in me. I think she saw something in me before I saw it in myself, right? And I was just you know, I've been working full time since I was 16 years old, right? And I have, you know, did school full time, partied full time, and worked full time. Full-time jobs.
Yes.
Triple threat. Triple threat. But it was important for me to have that balance. And I really, when I first started working in libraries, it was a great kind of good paying job at the time, right? But I never thought it was going to become a career. And I had this woman, her name was Dee Gans, who passed a couple of years ago, who just said, you need to become a librarian. She was relentless, but she understood me. She understood what I needed. And she kept kind of like, you know, on a daily basis, dropping hints and like dropping resources. And here's like a scholarship and here's this. And how are you doing your school? And like, I can support you. And simultaneously, I was at SDSU too. I thought, you know, I was very much into activism and I'm still am in my own way. But when I was in college, my major was Chicano Studies. And I was like, I want to work for the Chicano Federation, or I want to do this, I want to do that, which is great. And I still feel like that's fantastic work. But I had a Chicano Studies professor. His name is Isidro Ortiz. He is I think he's still influencing folks now, and he has been very influential in not just me, but a lot of students here in San Diego. And so he said, my sister's a librarian, and you know you work at the library. Have you thought of that as a career? So between Isidro and Dee, they are both like, I was getting it at school and I was getting it at work. And
did they know each other?
Do this. They did not know each other. Eventually they met. Eventually they actually met. And Isidro's still a big fan. And I mean, he was, you know, I was like, he's like, you could do these things that you're interested in and that you want to like advocacy and these things. Yeah. You could do them in this space. Yeah. And the minute that they literally almost like held my hand through the entire process to apply for library school and everything. And the minute I decided to become a librarian, I was like, what took me so long? But thank goodness for these mentors that understood my process and that like I had to kind of trust a little bit, trust in myself, trust that this was the right space for me, and see myself in you know, as a librarian. And I honestly don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to work anywhere else, you know, really. Like I have been around for 25 years for a reason, for the same library system. It's offered me so many opportunities, but the work and the impact that we have and like growing other librarians and like seeing what other library workers are doing together, what we're all doing, you know, to help, you know, our communities. It's huge. And I'm not going anywhere.
Cool. That's cool.
And kudos to the San Diego Public Library, right, for being forward thinking that way about we need to diversify our own field and make sure we're addressing the true community needs. So I'm just very appreciative that they saw that in you and have nurtured that, and because now you can continue to give back tenfold.
And I think that's what's so important to me is to make sure that folks have the opportunities and a way to come in and to understand that there's a balance with like personal life and needs and responsibilities, but that you could still do it, right? So to have like an entry point, to have that mentor, that person that's kind of helping you throughout, you know, your process, but to like see yourself there, right? And so now, I mean, right now I have a couple of mentees also within the library workforce that are just kind of like in their starting of their career. So I'm working, and honestly, I get so much more from mentees than I think I give them. I feel like, am I really motivating you? Or are you motivating me? But it's such a beautiful relationship, that mentor-mentee relationship. And to me, it was so valuable that I want to be able to, you know, give that back. But we need to understand, and then when we come from shared understandings, shared backgrounds, shared experiences, it's easier to kind of, connect and know what that person needs in that process of kind of moving through their career and making, you know, these decisions for themselves.
Yeah. Wonderful. So what's next for Ady and the library? What if you had a wand? What if you unlimited budget? That'd be amazing. What would you do?
You know, so this is going to sound like boring library talk, but we just finished I've only been in my position for about 6 months now. And one of my first kind of assignments was to look at our tactical plan and to write it with an equity lens. So we just,
speaking Jeanette's language.
So the city departments have, each department has a tactical plan of like what our plan is for the next, 5 years. That's what I think it goes as far as 5 years in the future. But this year we were so fortunate to be able to work with our city's Office of Race and Equity to do tactical equity plans. So we specifically had to incorporate some questions and some goals and objectives that were very equity focused, and every department had to do this. And so we looked at what our plan is and what we need to work on, what we need to make more accessible, who we need to work with and partner with from the beginning to make these goals and objectives happen, where our opportunities are, where we're on target, but we want to do more of. And so we just submitted that last month. And this is our 5-year plan. It also aligns with the city's strategic plan. But I was so proud that the library's plan was the example for the other city departments, because I really felt like, I don't know if I'm doing this right. You know, you have that imposter syndrome. But I think the reason that happened is because I'm like, we are not writing this from the higher level perspective. Everybody has to. Everybody that works at the library has to provide input into this tactical plan, because 1, all of us are going to be doing this work together, but 2, we need to hear from the folks that are connecting with community on a regular basis from different libraries. We have 36 libraries across the city. So I think that the reason our tactical plan was kind of, used as the example was because everybody had input. And that process is so important with anything that we do, right? We need input from the folks that are going to be doing this work and that have these observations. So what I'm excited about is increasing our accessibility for our programs. I'm excited to do more of these like social justice dialogues and anti-censorship campaigns, but working strategically and in a way that kind of resonates with different, different folks. And I'm excited to bring in more, as I mentioned, the mentors and the mentees and the interns to kind of help our workforce, but also to help them kind of create that pipeline into the workforce. I am really excited about our youth services team. So our youth services team right now, system-wide, is growing a little bit. We have our 36 youth librarians, but we have finally our team also in our our system-wide team, and we're looking at making sure that equity is part of every single program that we are, and it really naturally is, but to like, what is it, looking at each one of our programs and how can we change it? How can we tweak it so that we can make sure that we are reaching the communities that need these programs the most? Entrepreneurship is another thing that I'm super excited about, and creating like we have some plans at the Central Library to have like this kind of micro business center where folks can come in and learn, but also kind of share their ideas and thoughts, and even like if like they have products or things, so we can kind of display them and we can give them a platform. So we're kind of developing that. And our Idea Labs, that space that you mentioned at the Malcolm X Library. So we have Idea Labs where youth can explore technology, and depending on different, one of them, you know, has a podcast studio, 3D printers and whatnot, but we want to expand those Idea Labs to every community. So our plan is to look at each community, what the need is, what the interest is, and have an Idea Lab that is focused on what those interests are in our community. And our library master plan, so we are looking at building the libraries for the future. So we're having these listening sessions with each one of our libraries to find out if, like, money was no object, how would you like to make your library bigger, better? What kinds of programs do you want? But really having those community listening sessions as we build our libraries of the future, or we update our current libraries, right? So kind of that's like a long-term plan, but it's really exciting. And I was trying to think of one more thing that kind of came to mind when we were thinking about, I know what I mentioned, accessibility. It'll come back to me, but so yeah, just bringing more of the resources and making those resources accessible. One thing that happened, you know, since the pandemic is that we have the free hotspots. We have the park passes now for folks to discover, like national parks. We're looking at bringing in free Chromebooks and access to technology. So we want to have more of those resources that we know folks need to kind of bridge that digital divide, but to have more of those. So we're getting more funding because we're seeing the need, and libraries are a great way to make those available to all of our communities that need them, right? Like if you don't have the Wi-Fi, if you don't have the technology, you can come to the library and check this out. And then our student success cards. So those student cards are going to be student cards where we want to make them available to every student that's in school. And we want to make sure that they have access without feeling like they have barriers. So if you can borrow with the student success card, you can you just use your student ID to kind of get that card, and you can borrow up to 3 books. And if something happens, if you lose it or whatnot, you're not going to be liable for that. We'll like clear your record every year.
What?
You
no
know,
bill?
with
No library bill?
Take 3.
No library record?
Take 3.
Exactly.
Fines. But really, we don't
man,
want
I remember.
folks,
I remember those fines.
Yeah.
Oh man.
We don't want folks to feel like we hear it all the time. Like, I haven't been back to the library because I thought I owed this money. You know?
The alarm's gonna go off.
Exactly.
The door.
So right
They've
now,
been looking for me. They've been looking for me.
So right now we started like a pilot program with Sandy Unified School District, and we had a little pause because of the pandemic, but we want to, our end goal is to have every single student have access to a student card where all you need is your student ID to get that student card, and you can borrow books, and I hope we don't lose them. You know, you take them, you bring them, but if something happens, it's okay. You can keep borrowing books. You can keep using.
They're not penalized.
You're not going to be penalized.
Yeah.
And one thing I want to put out there is, if you owe fines, that does not matter. Come to the library. That's not going to keep you from using the library.
There's an amnesty program.
And we no longer have late fees. We no longer have late fees for books. So that happened a few years back. So if you have the books, just bring them back, because we no longer have the late fees. You know,
so a little PSA.
Right.
Well, I can hear the excitement and the passion, the love in your voice, Ady, and I know that's going to come across with our listeners, and you're exciting me to go back and do the library still loan out videos? Do you still have that? Okay. I want to go down memory lane and just go, you know.
I don't know how many VHS we have.
I don't have a VCR. It's okay.
No, but yes, we have audio books, video, and that's the other thing. We're increasing our ebook and our audiobook collection as well. And so we have, you know, all types of books and different, you know, materials. We have CDs. We still have CDs. That might be nostalgic. And we also have, like, at the Central Library, if you do have VHSs and you have, things that are kind of going out of date, you could come and digitize that. And we have free equipment. Yeah, it's our memory lab. So I'm saying this for Gabby, but for all the VHSers out there and folks, you can bring your old whatever it is, and you can digitize it so you can keep it, and you can have that memory as the technology phases out, right? Yeah. So we have that equipment for free that allows people to do
cool.
that, and we have staff that can help with that. So
I'm gonna be down there.
Yeah, that's at the downtown library, but we're going to be expanding that. And the other thing too with our collections, we want to capture our people's stories, right? So we are working on different projects where we can have folks come in and record their stories. We want to record our community stories. We want to whatever that is, have an archive of that, a digital archive, or maybe even create a book together. But to us, it's really important to capture those stories and those voices of our community. And we're looking at different creative ways of doing that. And we're going to be doing more of that in the future. So we're really excited to connect to community.
Cool.
And
there's some
stories.
grants I've seen, so I'll send them your way.
Yeah.
There's some funding that I've noticed at the federal level to support archiving people's stories.
Cool.
So we appreciate you and your time, Ady.
Thank you so much.
And just everything you do. It was so exciting to hear from you. I hope that listeners are encouraged to go support their local library. If you're a school district listening, partner with your local library.
A nonprofit.
Yes.
Partner with your local library.
We are here for you all, and you all are why we're here, so whatever you think that might be like a crazy thing, bring it our way, because we might be able to make that crazy thing happen, but really utilize this as a resource, because it is through these wonderful partnerships and through connecting to community that we can do our services better, that we can be responsive to what those needs are, and be those librarians or those people that you connected with when you were going to the library, to maybe even have a small connection, but like an impactful one. So we appreciate and love community, and that's what we're here for. We're here to serve everybody.
Well, we appreciate you. You've made talking about the library and librarians fun and sexy. And so thank you. I'm hoping we are encouraging folks to look at, just look at it in a different way, and perhaps even look at joining the workforce. So
yes.
So much love and admiration to you, Ady. We appreciate you so much. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
This podcast is made possible by the California Commission on the Status of Women and Girls. Additional sponsors include San Diego County Employees Charitable Organization. You can access all episodes and connect with us via email at allaboutgirlsofcolor.com.